That evening, a reception aboard the Taurus station's Grand Observatory Dome showcased Earth cuisine to the alien delegations. Ambassador Chen circulated with practiced ease, her silk attire concealing the subdermal translator and emergency beacon. The Meridians, crystalline beings who experienced emotions as color shifts, glowed pleased amber tones when sampling chocolate for the first time. Fascinating that your species developed confections with no nutritional value, the Meridian Prime observed, facets tinkling musically. Beauty and pleasure are their own form of sustenance. Chen replied, noting how the being's crystalline structure would shatter if struck at precisely the right resonance frequency, information she automatically catalogued despite herself. Across the room, Reed maintained his position near the exit, appearing merely decorative to most attendees. Only Chen recognized his constant micro-adjustments, positioning himself for optimal sightlines and response paths. His role as ceremonial security was another calculated misrepresentation. The Xortal delegation had stationed themselves near the viewport, their massive forms deliberately occupying more space than necessary, a dominance display transparent to anyone with basic xenopsychology training. Commander Vexnar's exoskeletal plates clicked rhythmically as he addressed the Theshian trade minister. Humans require controlled environments to survive, he noted, mandibles gesturing toward the environmental systems. Their civilization exists at the mercy of technology. How can such fragile creatures claim galactic significance? Chen pretended not to overhear while utilizing her implant to record the conversation. The Theshian, an amphibious diplomat with iridescent skin flaps, rippled uncomfortably. Yet they've developed remarkable adaptive technologies, the Theshian countered. Their environmental suits function in conditions that would dissolve my epidermis. Vexnar's secondary mandibles flicked dismissively. Compensating for weakness is not strength. Later, in the secure communications room of the human embassy, Chen replayed this conversation for Admiral Tarasova via quantum channel. The Admiral's weathered face betrayed no emotion as she listened. They're positioning for something, Chen concluded. The Thoril requested our terraforming research 3 times today. When refused diplomatically, Commander Vexnar's pheromone signature showed aggression markers my implant recognized from our Proxima conflict protocols. Tarasova nodded. Our settlement on Kepler 442 have reported unusual activity at their mining outpost. Unregistered scans from orbit. Thoril technology. Unknown, but their fleet movements suggest interest in that sector. Tarasova's eyes narrowed. Your daughter's research team deploys there next week. Chen's expression didn't change, but her pulse quickened. Maya's cynobiological restoration project had demonstrated promising results converting acidic environments to habitable conditions, potentially revolutionizing terraforming without the resource-intensive methods currently employed by the Xoril. I'll delay her departure, Chen said. Negative. Proceed normally. If the Xoril are planning something, altering our behavior will alert them. Tarasova paused, but I'm reassigning Reed to her security detail. He's my chief of security, and our best operative if things deteriorate. The Concilium already believes he's nothing more than your ceremonial guard. That perception is valuable. Chen understood the unspoken message. Reed would protect Maya if the diplomatic situation collapsed. Besides, Tarasova added with the faintest smile, let them continue underestimating us. History suggests it's the last mistake most species make. As Chen ended the transmission, Reed entered the secure room, his casual posture belying his alertness. They're watching the embassy, he reported, counting our numbers, assessing our capabilities, and finding exactly what we want them to see. Diplomats, scientists, cultural attaches. His eyes met hers. Nothing that looks dangerous. Chen nodded. The deception continued. The Concilium War Chamber had never hosted a mission briefing for a single operative before. Massive holographic displays surrounded Reed as he memorized the Xoril Fortress schematics. 3-dimensional renderings of the facility orbiting Taurus Prime rotated slowly, revealing entry points and security measures. Their quantum displacement shields prevent conventional insertion, explained Orcs, a Jexari tactical specialist whose 4 eyes blinked asynchronously as he manipulated the display. Even our most advanced stealth vessels would trigger their detection grid. Reed studied the shield modulation patterns, noting the millisecond variance in the northwestern quadrant. There's a harmonics issue in their shield generators, likely from mineral impurities in their power crystals. The Jexari's eyes widened in surprise. How could you possibly? Ambassador Chen's report on their mining operations mentioned quality control problems. Reed pointed to a seemingly random pattern in the shield matrix. That's not randomized security. It's equipment failure they're compensating for. Across the chamber, Ambassador Chen conferred with the Concilium High Council. Their voices carried to where Reed prepared. Your operative cannot possibly succeed, insisted Councillor Draff, a methane-breathing Vordaki, whose environmental suit hissed with each agitated gesture. The Xoril have never been defeated in ground combat. Their evolutionary history as hive predators makes their defensive coordination unparalleled. Chen's response was measured. Humanity evolved as persistence hunters, Counselor. Before we developed tools, we tracked prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We are biologically adapted to maintain focus on a target despite all distractions or obstacles. An interesting evolutionary footnote, dismissed another counselor, but hardly relevant to modern combat. Chen smiled thinly. We found that our oldest adaptations often prove most valuable in crisis. Meanwhile, Reed had moved to the weapons selection station. The Concilium Armory had opened its entire inventory to him, an unprecedented measure that reflected the gravity of the situation. To the aliens' confusion, Reed bypassed their most advanced weaponry in favor of simpler tools, a vibroblade with manual controls rather than neural interface, ballistic weapons instead of energy projectors, and mechanical traps instead of eye-guided hunter drones. Our analysis suggests that the Taural Outpost contains countermeasures for all standard Concilium tactical systems, explained a Meridian weapons specialist, crystalline appendages gesturing toward the ignored high-tech arsenal. Exactly, Reed replied, testing the balance of the blade. They'll be prepared for whatever you would deploy. And they won't anticipate primitive technology. Reed secured the blade in a forearm sheath. Nothing primitive about choosing the right tool for the environment. Their electronic countermeasures can't jam a projectile once fired. Across the chamber, a transmission interrupted the council debate. A holoprojection of Commander Vexnar materialized, mandibles spread wide in what humans now recognized as a gesture of contempt. We have received intelligence that you plan some form of military response, the Xoril announced. Be advised that any approaching vessels will trigger automated defense systems. The human specimens remain unharmed. For now. Chen stepped forward. Commander, there must be a diplomatic. Diplomacy failed when you refused to share your terraforming technology. Vexnar interrupted. The humans in our custody will provide it instead, or they will be processed for biological components. The transmission ended abruptly. A heavy silence fell across the chamber until Reed closed his equipment case with a decisive click. Insertion window opens in 3 hours, he announced, his voice carrying unexpected authority that silenced even the council members. I'll need a transport to the jump point and communication blackout once I'm deployed. Chen approached him, speaking quietly. Maya's biosigns are still stable. Whatever they're doing, they haven't started invasive procedures yet. Reed nodded once. They won't get the chance. As he exited the chamber, Reed overheard a Theshian delegate's whispered question. Can he actually succeed against an entire Xoril fortress? Ambassador Chen's response followed him into the corridor. The Xoril are about to learn why humans go to such lengths to appear peaceful. The transport vessel approached the dark side of Taurus Prime's largest moon. In the ship's preparation chamber, Reed completed his final equipment check, while the Concilium observation team made adjustments to his biomonitor implant. Our systems struggle to interpret your neurotransmitter levels, explained Dr. Liss, a Thesian cinephysiologist whose translucent fingers manipulated holographic representations of Reed's brain chemistry. The readings suggest contradictory states, heightened alertness yet cardiovascular patterns consistent with meditative calm. Reed secured a series of small devices to his tactical vest. It's called the Zone in human combat terminology, optimal performance state. The doctor's skin rippled with academic interest. Fascinating. Your species can consciously regulate your fear response. Not suppress it, channel it. Reed checked the oxygen mixture in his breather mask. Fear keeps you alive if you use it properly. Ambassador Chen entered, having completed her briefing with Concilium High Command. The aliens tactfully withdrew to the monitoring station, allowing the humans a moment of privacy. Maya's locator beacon activated briefly, Chen said quietly. 17 minutes at coordinates matching their medical section. Then it went dark again. Reed nodded, absorbing the information without visible reaction. They're moving the hostages separately. Standard procedure when expecting a rescue attempt. The Concilium believes you'll abort once you discover they've been separated. A ghost of a smile crossed Reed's face. Convenient assumption. Chen handed him a small data crystal. Maya's research, the real reason they targeted her specifically. Quantum encrypted. It'll self-destruct if anyone without human DNA attempts to access it. Reed secured the crystal in a protected inner pocket. Insurance. Leverage, if necessary. Chen's diplomatic mask slipped momentarily, revealing the military commander beneath. The Concilium doesn't understand what the Thoril actually want. Maida's microbial restoration project threatens their entire economic model. Her bacteria can reclaim worlds they've strip-mined, worlds they plan to sell back to desperate species at extortionate prices. So this isn't just about hostages, Reed concluded. It never is. Chen's expression hardened. The Xoril don't just want our technology. They want to prevent its deployment. Maya isn't a bargaining chip. She's a target for elimination once they extract her research. The ship's emergency lighting activated as they entered the moon's shadow. Reed performed one final weapons check before moving toward the drop pod. Marcus, Chen said, using his first name for the first time since the crisis began. Something in her tone made him pause. The Concilium's tactical advisors have calculated a 3.7% survival probability for this mission. Reed secured his helmet. They're calculating based on their own capabilities and tactics. And if they were calculating based on yours, they lack the context to make that assessment. The helmet sealed with a pressurized hiss, but his voice remained clear through the comm. Humans developed warfare in a different evolutionary context. Predator species like the Xoril evolved to hunt in coordinated packs, targeting weaker prey. And humans. Reed entered the drop pod, his voice taking on a strange, detached quality that the observation team's recorders struggled to classify. We evolved hunting things that could kill us just as easily as we could kill them. Every engagement was potentially fatal, so we learned to fight like we're already dead. The pod doors sealed as final launch preparations began. On the observation deck, the Concilium representatives watched through a reinforced viewport. I still don't understand, the Meridian tactical officer said, crystalline structure reflecting the emergency lights. How can a single human expect to overcome Xoril defenses when our simulations show even a special operations team would fail? Chen watched as the pod ejected toward the distant fortress. Because your simulations assume rational self-preservation as a core parameter. Her eyes remained fixed on the rapidly diminishing point of light that contained humanity's response to the Xoril provocation. They're about to face something that operates outside those parameters. Inside the Xoril fortress, Sub-Commander Krevak studied the security anomalies with growing unease. 6 guard stations had failed to report in the last hour, all in the outer perimeter's western quadrant. Interference from the acidic mist, insisted his second-in-command. It disrupts communications during the lunar transit. Krevax's mandibles clicked in agitation. All 6 stations. Simultaneously. Before his subordinate could respond, the environmental alarms activated in 3 separate sectors. Krevax brought up the monitoring feeds, showing Sorrel guards converging on the affected areas. Toxic atmosphere warnings flashed across the display. Life support malfunction, reported a technician. Exoskeletal fingers moving rapidly across control surfaces. Ventilation systems in sectors 7 through 9 are cycling external atmosphere. Override. Systems not responding to command protocols. The technician's voice carried the chittering undertone of Sorrel anxiety. Something has corrupted the environmental controls. On the security feeds, Sorrel soldiers collapsed as acidic atmosphere filled their sectors. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, trapping them in the compromised areas. Krevax activated the command center's independent life support system, a precaution suddenly seeming prescient. "Deploy the carapace guard to secure the command level," he ordered, "and locate the human specimens. Now." In the fortress's lower levels, Reed moved through maintenance tunnels designed for repair drones. The confined space would have been challenging for the much larger Extoril, but Reed navigated with efficient precision. His tactical visor displayed fortress schematics overlaid with life sign indicators, each red dot representing a Xoril biosignature. The visor's edge showed scrolling data from the fortress systems he had compromised. Upon insertion, Reed had targeted not the communication network, but something the Xoril considered too mundane to thoroughly secure: the atmospheric monitoring system. The maintenance diagnostics program he had introduced was designed to appear as a routine update, spreading through subsystems while cataloging vulnerabilities. Reed paused at a junction, listening. The pheromone sensors in his mask detected the chemical signatures of Sorrel stress hormones. They were beginning to realize something was wrong. He needed to accelerate his timeline. Accessing the compromised system through his wrist interface, Reed initiated the next phase. Throughout the fortress, lighting systems began to fail selectively, creating patches of darkness in precisely calculated locations. Simultaneously, the internal communication system emitted high-frequency pulses on the specific resonance that Concilium intelligence had identified as disruptive to Sorrel neural implants. The darkness and communication disruption weren't merely to create confusion. The Xoril, evolved from hive predators, relied heavily on coordinated group response. Isolated and disoriented, they would default to individual survival instincts, abandoning strategic deployment. Reed's interface showed the desired effect spreading through the fortress. Sorrel life signs moving erratically, congregating in defensive clusters rather than maintaining perimeter integrity. The path to the detention level was opening. In the command center, Krevax watched his security forces disintegrate into chaos. "This isn't random system failure," he hissed, mandibles fully extended in the Sorrel expression of rage. "We're under attack." "Impossible," insisted his second. "Our perimeter remains intact. No vessels have approached. The Concilium lacks the capability for this type of infiltration." Krevax's attention fixed on the security feed from Detention Level 3, where the most valuable human specimen, the female scientist, was held in isolation. The feed showed only darkness, but the life sign monitor still indicated her presence. "Send a squad to secure the priority specimen," he ordered. "Use manual communication protocols only, and inform Commander Vexnar that we may have underestimated the human response." As the orders were relayed, the fortress's primary power core initiated an unexpected shutdown sequence, plunging entire sectors into darkness. The emergency systems activated, bathing the corridors in a red glow that reduced Xoril visual acuity by 60%. In the maintenance tunnel, Reed checked his chronometer. The Xoril would be moving the priority hostage, Maya Chen, to a more secure location. The chaos he had engineered provided the perfect cover to intercept the transfer team. He loaded a specialized round into his sidearm. Unlike standard ammunition, this projectile contained a neurochemical compound specifically designed for Xoril physiology, derived from the same research that Maya had been conducting on microbial interactions. Human ingenuity had turned the Xorril's target into their undoing. Reed disconnected Maya from the neural extractor with methodical precision. Her vital signs were stable, but her consciousness remained fragmented. The Xorril extraction process had scattered her memories across isolated neural pathways to prevent resistance during interrogation. A standard medical evac would take hours to safely reintegrate her consciousness, time they didn't have. The laboratory contained 3 other extraction units, each connected to the facility's central data core. 2 held the bodies of researchers who hadn't survived the process. The third contained something unexpected. A Thesian diplomat whose amphibious features were barely recognizable after extensive neural degradation. "They're collecting knowledge from multiple species," Reed muttered, his tactical visor scanning and recording everything for later intelligence analysis. Maya's eyelids fluttered, consciousness partially returning. "M. Marcus." Her voice was weak but lucid. "How?" "Standard extraction countermeasures," he replied, administering a stabilizing compound from his medical kit. Ambassador Chen insisted all key personnel receive neural partitioning implants after first contact. "The others," Maya whispered, "my team." "Working on it." Reed accessed the laboratory's data terminal, bypassing security protocols using credentials extracted from a Xorril officer who no longer needed them. The facility schematic appeared, highlighting life sign indicators for the remaining human hostages. They were being moved, converging on the central hangar level. In the observation chamber orbiting Taurus Station, the Concilium representatives watched Reed's helmet feed with growing astonishment. The Meridian Tactical Officer's crystalline structure had shifted to deep violet, their species indicator of profound cognitive reassessment. "He's not just rescuing hostages," the Meridian observed, facets glinting in the observation light. "He's systematically dismantling their entire research operation." Ambassador Chen stood motionless, her attention fixed on her daughter's partially conscious form in Reed's helmet feed. "The neural extractor wasn't designed solely for interrogation," she noted. "The Xorril were looking for something specific in Maya's research." Dr. Liss, monitoring Reed's biometrics, made a sound of scientific fascination. "His biochemical markers should be impossible. Human physiology shouldn't sustain this combination of hyper-awareness and cardiovascular control." "What's happening to him?" asked a Jexeri observer. "Combat evolution," Chen replied without elaboration. On the laboratory terminal, Reed discovered what the Xorril had extracted from Maya's mind: the complete genetic sequence for her specialized micro-colonies, engineered to transform toxic environments into habitable ecosystems. The Xorril hadn't just wanted to suppress the technology. They had sought to weaponize it. Reed downloaded the data to a secure module, then initiated a corruption sequence that would render the Xorril copy unusable. As he worked, Maya's awareness continued returning. "They underestimated the adaptive potential," she said, voice growing stronger as the stabilizing compound took effect. "My restoration bacteria. They were terrified of what it could become." Reed helped her to a sitting position. "Explain." "The microbes don't just clean environments. They evolve to counter new toxins autonomously. The Xorril realized my bacteria could adapt to neutralize their mining chemicals faster than they could develop new compounds." Maya's eyes focused as her neural pathways began reintegrating. It would end their extractive monopoly within a decade. A security alert flashed on Reed's visor, carapace guards converging on their position from 3 access points. Simultaneously, the facility's remaining functional systems initiated lockdown protocols. Commander Vexnar had evidently decided to sacrifice the entire research station rather than lose control of the information it contained. Reed's expression remained unchanged as he assessed their deteriorating tactical situation. He secured Maya with a portable stabilization field, then accessed his wrist communicator. Time to introduce the Xorril to another human evolutionary adaptation, he told Maya, voice taking on the eerily calm quality that had unsettled the Concilium observers. "Our ancestors didn't just learn to hunt predators. They learned to become them." He activated a device that interfaced directly with the facility's atmospheric processors. The chemical compound it released into the ventilation system was derived from Maya's own research, modified from restoration bacteria into something with very different properties. In the Concilium observation chamber, Ambassador Chen watched with grim satisfaction as Xoral life signs across the facility began to flicker and fade. "What did he just deploy?" demanded the Vordaki counselor. "Insurance," Chen replied. "And a message." The central hangar bay's massive doors refused to seal properly as Reed approached with Maya secured in a mobile med harness. His tactical systems identified the malfunction as the result of his earlier sabotage, a fortunate coincidence that now provided their only entry point. Through the gap, Reed observed the remaining Xoral forces had established a defensive perimeter around the human hostages. 19 civilians huddled at the center of the hangar, surrounded by carapace guards whose reinforced exoskeletons gleamed dully in the emergency lighting. A Xoral shuttle stood ready for evacuation. Reed's visor analysis indicated Commander Vexnar himself had joined the group, a development that altered the tactical scenario significantly. The Xoral commander's presence suggested not just a hostage situation, but a last stand. "They're abandoning the fortress," Maya observed, her voice stronger now that the neural stabilizers had taken full effect. "Your chemical agent, derivative of your SX7 restoration bacteria," Reed confirmed, "reprogrammed to target their respiratory filtration systems." Maya's scientific mind immediately grasped the implications, selectively attacking chitin structures in their breathing membranes without affecting other organic material. Elegant adaptation. "Your work. I just reproposed it." Reed surveyed the hangar bay, identifying structural weaknesses and calculating angles. "Vexnar hasn't transmitted the full neural extraction data yet. Their quantum communication array was one of the first systems I disabled. So they still need living hostages as bargaining chips," Maya concluded. "And transport off-station before my modified bacteria renders the entire facility uninhabitable." Reed checked his remaining equipment. The specialized rounds he had designed for Xoral physiology would be effective against standard troops, but the carapace guards' reinforced exoskeletons required a different approach. In the Concilium observation chamber, tension had reached unprecedented levels. 3 counselors had demanded intervention, while others insisted on maintaining the non-interference protocol. Ambassador Chen stood resolute, her attention fixed on the tactical display showing Reed's approach to the hangar. "He cannot possibly extract all hostages from that position," insisted the Vordaki counselor, environmental suit hissing with each agitated gesture. "The odds are irrelevant," Chen interrupted. "You're still thinking in terms of conventional tactical scenarios. What alternative exists? He is outnumbered and outgunned." Chen's expression remained impassive. When humans are cornered with others under their protection, conventional tactical analysis becomes meaningless. On the hangar bay's upper maintenance catwalk, Reed secured Maya in a protected alcove. "Stay here. Communication blackout until I signal." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Maya's face. "There are 21 of them, Marcus, even with your modifications. Numbers don't matter." Reed's voice carried that same unnatural calm that had unsettled the Concilium observers. "Not anymore." He retrieved a small cylinder from his tactical vest and pressed it into Maya's hand. "Insurance, if I don't return in 15 minutes. Activate it. It contains a Deadman's transmission with everything we've learned about their operation, and coordinates for a Concilium peacekeeping fleet." Before she could respond, Reed moved to the edge of the catwalk. Below, Commander Vexnar was addressing his troops. "The human agent has proven unexpectedly resourceful," the commander admitted, mandibles clicking in agitation. "But he is alone, and we hold his primary objective. Once our shuttle clears the facility, we will rendezvous with our battle cruiser and complete our research extraction." A junior officer's mandibles quivered in the Xoral expression of uncertainty. "The atmospheric contamination is spreading rapidly, Commander. Our filtration systems, will sustain us long enough. Vexnar interrupted. The human cannot defeat an entire carapace guard unit alone. Prepare the prisoners for transport. From his vantage point, Reed made final targeting calculations. The modified bacteria he had released into the ventilation system would soon reach the hangar bay. He needed to create enough confusion to extract the hostages before the Xoril realized their respiratory systems were compromised. Reed removed his helmet, a decision that caused gasps in the Concilium observation chamber. The action wasn't reckless. The hangar's atmosphere remained breathable for humans, but it carried symbolic weight that transcended tactical considerations. The Xoril would see his face when he came for them. The Xoril High Command's emergency session descended into chaos as Reed's transmission concluded. The massive chamber, hewn from living chitin grown over generations, buzzed with the agitated clicks and hisses of panicked leadership. Supreme Commander Zexval, whose ancient exoskeleton bore the ceremonial scarification of 17 military campaigns, silenced the room with a thunderous mandible clash. Verification of Commander Vexnar's status, he demanded. A communications officer's appendages trembled as he delivered the report. Confirmed terminated, Supreme Commander, along with the entire research station complement. Our battle cruiser reports no survivors. And the human data. The neural extraction was incomplete. Preliminary analysis suggests the human scientist's research was genuine, but the officer hesitated. Something was altered in the samples we recovered. Zexval's compound eyes narrowed. Explain. The microbial restoration technology appears functional in controlled environments, but undergoes rapid mutation when exposed to our standard atmospheric compounds. The mutation is aggressive. Across the chamber, Science Director Kexmar activated a holographic display showing microscopic organisms consuming Xoril cellular structures. The human's message wasn't merely a threat. It was a demonstration. These modified bacteria target specific genetic markers. Xoril genetic markers. The implications silenced even the most vocal war advocates. Their species' evolutionary advantage, their reinforced exoskeletons, had become their vulnerability. The human scientist had developed a technology that could render entire Xoril worlds uninhabitable within days. How could they possess such capability? Demanded a planetary governor. Our intelligence indicated humans were primitive compared to our biological engineering. Science Director Kexmar's mandibles clicked in the pattern denoting scientific fascination overriding fear. They evolved on a world with millions of competing organisms. Their biological adaptation strategies reflect this chaotic environment. In the executive chambers of the Concilium headquarters, Ambassador Chen watched the Xoril's internal communications with calculated interest. The emergency quantum tap that Reed had installed during his mission continued providing invaluable intelligence. They're withdrawing their military vessels from all contested territories, reported a Thesian analyst, skin flaps rippling with excitement. 3 mining colonies already report evacuation procedures in progress. Chen nodded, maintaining her diplomatic composure despite the victory unfolding before them. And the Thesian diplomat recovered with the other hostages. His neural patterns show extensive damage, but our medical technologies can restore approximately 78% of his cognitive function. On a separate screen, Maya Chen conducted her first post-rescue briefing with the Concilium Scientific Division. Despite her ordeal, she presented with remarkable clarity, explaining how her restoration bacteria could be deployed safely on worlds damaged by Xoril mining operations. The modified strain created during the rescue operation was a targeted variant, she explained to the gathered xenobiologists. The standard restoration bacteria pose no threat to any sentient species, including the Xoril. A Meridian scientist's crystalline structure shifted to a questioning azure hue. But the Xoril believe you possess a weaponized version. Maya's eyes briefly met her mother's across the chamber. That misconception provides certain diplomatic advantages. Ambassador Chen turned her attention to a priority communication from Admiral Tarasova. The message was brief but significant. Sorrel diplomatic envoy requesting immediate audience. Proposal includes unprecedented access to mining territories and technology exchange. The ambassador permitted herself a small smile. Human diplomacy had entered a new phase, one backed by the unspoken but clearly demonstrated consequences of underestimating humanity's protective instincts. In a secure medical facility, Reed underwent standard post-mission evaluation. His biochemistry had already returned to normal parameters, the extraordinary combat neurochemistry receding now that the threat had passed. To the Concilium medical observers, the transformation seemed almost supernatural, a biological switch turning a peaceful human diplomat into a lethal operative, and back again. "How do you manage the transition?" asked Dr. Liss, still fascinated by the physiological readings. The cognitive dissonance between such extremes of behavior must create psychological strain. Reed's expression remained neutral as the medical drone completed its scan. "There is no transition," he explained. "No dissonance. Protection and devastation are points on the same continuum. The capacity for both exists in every human." The Thesian doctor's skin rippled with unease. "A frightening evolutionary adaptation." "Only if you threaten what we protect," Reed replied. 6 months after the Terrace incident, construction began on the first interspecies ecological restoration center on the formerly abandoned mining world of Kelva Prime. Maya Chen supervised as Thesian architects, Meridian crystal engineers, and human environmental scientists collaborated on a facility designed to implement her microbial restoration technology on a planetary scale. Ambassador Chen walked the perimeter of the construction site with Zextol, the newly appointed Sorrel diplomatic representative. Unlike his predecessors, Zextol's ceremonial armor had been modified to appear less militaristic, a subtle but significant cultural shift. "Your daughter's work will transform 17 of our exhausted mining worlds within a decade," the Sorrel acknowledged, mandibles held in the position of respectful discourse. "The economic implications are considerable." Chen watched as a team of Jexteri environmental specialists released the first batch of restoration bacteria into a test quadrant. Already, the barren soil showed microscopic changes. "The Concilium profit-sharing agreement ensures economic stability during your transition from extraction-based economics. A generous arrangement, considering the circumstances of our previous interaction." Both diplomats understood the carefully worded reference to what was now officially termed the misunderstanding at Terra Station. The Sorrel had publicly reclassified the incident as a rogue military commander's unsanctioned action, a convenient fiction that allowed diplomatic relations to proceed. Across the compound, Reed maintained a discreet distance, once again serving as Chen's security chief. His official record made no mention of the Terrace rescue operation, though his reputation among Concilium species had taken on almost mythological dimensions. Junior diplomats from various worlds sometimes requested assignment to the human delegation, specifically to observe him, hoping to glimpse something of the duality that had so profoundly reshaped galactic politics. They were invariably disappointed. The man who had single-handedly dismantled a Sorrel fortress now spent his days performing routine security protocols and occasionally enjoying Thesian poetry during diplomatic receptions. As the site tour concluded, Ambassador Chen received a priority communication from Concilium headquarters. She reviewed the data while Zextol conferred with his own delegation. "Significant development?" Reed asked quietly, noting her expression. "The Vordaki have submitted a formal protest regarding human expansion in the Rigel sector," Chen replied. "Their communication includes veiled references to adjustment through military means if we don't withdraw from the contested colony worlds." Reed's expression remained neutral, but something subtle shifted in his posture, a change imperceptible to most observers, but unmistakable to Chen. The Vordaki were observers during the Terrace incident. Apparently they believe it was an isolated circumstance, or perhaps they calculate that their methane-based physiology provides immunity to certain diplomatic approaches. Reed glanced toward Maya's laboratory complex, where her team continued refining microbial strains for various environmental conditions. An interesting hypothesis. Chen's comm unit signaled again. The Concilium requests your presence at the security briefing regarding Bordaki military capabilities. Not yours. They specify you by name. Chen permitted herself a small smile. It seems your perspective on defensive protocols has developed a certain reputation. As they walked toward the shuttle bay, Zextol observed the human security chief's departure with his compound eyes. The Xoril diplomat's mandibles clicked softly and the pattern denoting profound respect hinged with lingering fear. Your species continues to fascinate our xenobiologists, he told Ambassador Chen. We've revised our classification of humans extensively since our first encounter. Oh, Chen maintained her diplomatic composure. And how does the Xoril Imperium categorize humanity now? Zextol's mandibles formed the pattern indicating careful consideration. We have created an entirely new classification. The nearest translation in your language would be the gentle ones who walk with death as companion. Our military academies now teach that the human smile is not a sign of weakness, but a warning. It signifies a predator comfortable enough to reveal its teeth. Chen didn't correct him. Some misunderstandings were valuable.